Welcome back to Worldie Unboxed. I'm Brandon here with Aaron. This season, we're talking about the small decisions, experiences, and opportunities that shape how kids move, play, and build confidence before sports ever get serious. Today, we're joined by David Hill, who has been a huge part of helping bring Worldie shoes to life. David has spent decades in footwear development and manufacturing, helping brands turn ideas into real products. But what makes this conversation especially interesting is that David's story starts well before footwear. He was a serious soccer player who nearly went pro, and he's still someone who challenges himself through running, endurance events, and staying active. So what I'm excited to get into today is how movement can shape a life, not just in sports, but in confidence, career, parenting, and the way we keep showing up over time. David, thanks for joining us. I'd love to start with your story. Before footwear, before Worldie, what role did soccer and movement play in your life?
Man, that's a great question. Yeah, movement has always been a part of my life as long as I can remember. Soccer, I started I grew up in Taiwan. I was actually born there and didn't have a lot of access to sports, but I mean, just overall, playing and just being active was a big part of growing up there. I mean, obviously when we grew up, we didn't really have the luxuries, the digital luxuries that we have now. So it was outside playing with friends, and I moved to Seattle when I was 8 and started to pick up sports once I came to America and tried a whole bunch of stuff, right? Basketball, baseball, but landed on soccer. And I was a bit of a late starter. I started when I was like 11 or 12, but just quickly fell in love with it. Ran my life all through university, post university, and I still play it now. I mean, I try to be competitive. I'm an old guy relatively now in soccer age, right? Because I'm
Yeah, you
37 right
you age
now.
quickly in
Yeah.
sports.
Yeah, so I'm an older guy in soccer, and so trying to keep up with like the young 20-year-olds is just like it's just not a thing anymore. But I want to play as long as I can. I love the sport. I love the tactics of it, the quick thinking, the decisions that you have to make while you play, but also just the active in the movement. Obviously, it just helps when you're chasing a ball. You're not really thinking about you're actually moving, and some people I think fall in love with soccer in that sense. But yeah, no, it was really through soccer and in university where they started to focus a lot more on the strength and the endurance aspect of the sport and building that. And really, that's where I started learning about how to increase strength relative to performance. How that would benefit my soccer, and it was really learning a lot more of on the human movement side. I fell in love with that aspect as well because I actually started out in personal training and
Okay.
and did that. Yeah, so I did that for a bit, even before footwear. But yeah, it was through soccer and the personal training that really kept me in the whole movement mindset. I loved it. I tried moving as much as I can. I still do now. But yeah, I would say that's kind of the story before footwear. But I would say a lot of that really influenced how I handle my footwear developments now in terms of understanding the biomechanics and creating footwear that actually helps with certain movements, whether it's like sports specific or even just walking. So yeah, it all kind of came together and it's still, it's led up to how I am today.
That's a pretty cool journey. And like how just a little bit of a side tangent. How close were you to being pro?
I was really close. I've trained with so back then, this was
Uh-huh.
before the Sounders were in the MLS. This was like before they jumped from USL, which was kind of like the American low. It was the pro league before, right under the MLS.
Gotcha.
So I trained with the Sounders first team, but I never made a debut. So I got close to kind of like a professional debut. But yeah, man, that was really hard for me. It was, but yeah, I mean, it was something that I really worked hard for from, preparing like the strength and the endurance and stuff. And I felt ready physically, but I think what really held me back was the mental
Hmm.
jump because sometimes this really separates, great players from professional players is just the final mental puzzle of figuring out the confidence and being consistent. And so that's what really separated me from that level, unfortunately. But
Yeah, yeah.
hindsight is always like, oh man. But
No, it's got to be a crazy experience though, like to be able to be that close. I mean, the closest I've been is probably just sitting in the stands watching. So to be out there, to be a part of it, the beautiful game is that's pretty amazing. And looking back on it now, I know you were kind of doing a little bit of that right here. How has that experience changed or impacted who you are today?
Yeah, I would say I understand the amount of work that it goes into getting to that level. And I think being able to have that in my resume of, the countless 1,000+ hours of playing and, whatever I felt like it took to get to that point and being able to really communicate with my kids on hard work, dedication. And if it's something that, you know, with kids, I think that you as a parent, you always want them to experience something that you've never experienced in the most positive way, right? I mean, you want to give that to them. You want to give them the resources, the time, the dedication to get them to that. But then it's also helping them understand that it's not just as a parent, paying for the camps, paying for the lessons, driving them there, but it's also they really need to have that mindset that this is going to take a lot of work. And even if there isn't a guarantee that it's going to pay off, you're still going to have to do it. And that's just the reality of things sometimes. But it's being able to have that mindset where hard work and the dedication that you need to put in, I mean, it trickles to other things. So it's a lesson in itself, right? So I would say that's the biggest takeaway for me now as a parent is just helping them with the reality of if they're really going after something, that it's a lot more than they realize and helping them hopefully avoid what I experience and always a
Yeah.
parent's goal is like this is what I learned in my life and I really want to help you avoid what I learned and just working with them all the way through until they hopefully get to where they want to.
Are there any values that you had when you were an athlete that now, with some time away from the sport, now that you have kids that you're kind of like, I don't think that's right. I don't want my kids to grow up and have that same mentality around sports or just in general?
Yeah, I would say for me, I am heavily biased on wanting my kids to play soccer, right? Because the kids right now, they're trying different things, right? They're trying, gymnastics. My girl's doing lacrosse, which is really cool. But I think how we were raised was kind of like, no, this is what you're going to do. There's a little bit of like a forced upon, you know what I mean? That parents kind of just force you to do something, whether you really don't feel like you have a say. And I feel like that's not the right way to approach now with my kids. With my kids, I try to kind of gently push them. But then there's a balance between letting them choose something, but also following through on a certain commitment. So I want our kids to really try everything. I want them to try any sport that they want to try. But, at some point there comes the conversation where the kid's like, I really want to get good at this, or like, oh, I really like this athlete and I really want to be like them. And then the conversation, kind of what I was talking about earlier, is like, okay, if you want to get to that point, like this is where you need to start understanding that instead of trying all these different things, maybe you need to start dedicating yourself to this one thing and spend a lot of time on it and really put in the hard work because that's what it takes. So it's kind of the balance between being flexible with what they feel like they want to do and what they want to try and not having them feel like they're forced into something, but then playing on their ambitions and then almost not really forcing them, but relaying the reality that if this is what you want to do, then you really need to focus on this. Otherwise, it's not going to play out the way you hope. So that's the way that I see it now is being flexible in their choice, but then really pushing them on their ambition.
Yep, that makes sense. I want to ask you about the confidence piece because you mentioned it. And I don't know if you remember, but me and you in a coffee shop, we talked about this a while ago. And you mentioned that's the first time you mentioned to me that you felt like the confidence piece is kind of what held you back. And I feel like sometimes in my life in sports, I could have done something, but if the confidence isn't there, it makes it that much harder. And in sports, you're kind of always going up a level if you're playing well. And you eventually get to a level where you realize what I was doing at that lower level, it just doesn't work anymore. And that can be a little bit intimidating. It can kind of, impact your confidence. So I'm curious in terms of going through that experience, almost making it pro and feeling like it was the confidence piece that held you back. What did you learn from that, and how do you apply it to your life, to your career, to kind of, for me, I'm kind of like, I don't want to be in that situation again. So I try to learn and see what I did, maybe not correctly in my athletic career, and apply it in my life. So I'm just curious to hear more about, that confidence piece and how you have learned from your athletic career and applied it in other aspects of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. The confidence for me relative to soccer, I would say it was really about a fear of playing the way that I would like, I guess. And it's and how that would impact, a certain play, or, what other players would think, or, be upset or something like that. So it really caused a lot of hesitation in decision making. Cause you played soccer too. And when you start overthinking, that's where you run into trouble. Right. And in my best moments, it just feels like you're in a flow, and you're just almost like letting your body just take over and just play. You just shut your mind off. Cause I would say that's really what caused, in the moments that mattered, I kind of failed myself in that sense, where I was overthinking or whatever, because there was just things that I was worried about. I was thinking about it. And so I think the confidence in just trusting your ability and being able to shut off your brain when you're playing, and just, I think that I learned that too late. And I think even now, I even play with, like, the leagues that I'm playing in now. So I sometimes experience that, because I think it wasn't really something I ever worked through. But I think being able to focus on understanding where that comes from, and as you understand that, I think you're able to slowly work through it. I would say that's the biggest takeaway. It's not necessarily a false sense of confidence, because I think that sometimes people, when they have these types of emotions and feelings, they try to override it with like this narrative that they play in their head, and just to kind of keep the voice down, or just to ignore it. But I think that still comes out in some shape or form. So if you don't work through the like, why is this happening? I think it makes it really hard to be confident, because you know, it's like a trigger, right? It's something that, unless you understand where it comes from, it's just going to keep happening. I would say that's my biggest lesson, is that I never really understood where it came from up, up until the professional stuff. And it was really after I kind of gave up on the whole pro run, where I started really understanding it, my internal emotions, and how, why I feel this way about something, or whatever the case. And kind of working through that, I started to realize that, my lack of confidence really just came from just a fear of playing. And I just have to always remind myself, like, who cares, man? It's just soccer. Just play. You know, who cares if you dribble and lose the ball? Who cares? If some dude yells at you, maybe I don't know, his package got stolen from a porch pirate. Maybe he's just upset that day, like, so it's really those lessons of making sure that you understand why you have those confidence issues, and just working through it. I would say it's not easy. There's no simple answer. It's just like, you got to figure it out, man. And if you don't, it's just going to keep coming back.
No, that definitely makes sense. And then, as an entrepreneur, I feel like you're always doing risky things. You need a lot of confidence. So from the entrepreneurship standpoint, I guess, how do you feel with the confidence piece and all the demands, that requires?
That's a good question, man. What's really funny is I don't have those same confidence issues in entrepreneurship relative to soccer. And it kind of goes back to when I was talking about, you kind of have to understand where that's coming from. The reason why is because my initial, through soccer, a fear of playing, and impacting other people, and whatever the case may be. I find that less in entrepreneurship relative to my own business. Is my decisions. I don't have to worry what other people think about my decisions for entrepreneurship, because it's my business, and I'm just going to do what's best for my business. And I've done a lot of learning about footwear and learning about how to run a business properly and this and that. And I'm very confident in my knowledge enough to make certain decisions that I feel is best. And I don't really care what other people think if you don't think it's a good idea. Because based on what I've learned, I think this is a good idea. And I think a lot of that confidence has built over time too, because when I first started out, I was actually working for my parents. So I had to really slowly kind of make decisions and see how that played out. And I would say from that point until now, I'm at a position now where it's like, oh yeah, I feel like I know what I'm doing because I'm not bankrupt, which is great. I can provide for my family. We can do stuff that, I feel that I consider a luxury. It's awesome. I feel like a lot of decisions I've made has put us in such a great spot. Like how do you not have confidence in that? So it's, I didn't really have to worry about other people in the entrepreneurship side versus soccer where you're constantly surrounded by people and any decision you make gets immediate feedback. So I guess that was the main difference for me was kind of like that immediate feedback from people, whether they're like, oh dude, like can't believe you lost the ball. Like what a terrible pass. And that sits with you a lot more, I would say.
I agree with that. You mentioned your parents. I think you told me in the past that your dad either knew or worked with Phil Knight. Is that right? Or am I misremembering that?
He knows Phil Knight. Oh yeah. This was this was like in the whole Renaissance phase of footwear when it like, Phil Knight, obviously with Blue Ribbon Sports, went over to Japan and kind of started making his shoes over there. And it was around the same time my dad was working with Wolverine, which at the time owned Brooks Running. And so my dad ran a whole Brooks Running and moved everything over to not Japan, but over to Korea. Started setting everything up there as well. And so it was like kind of this whole golden age of footwear where everything started moving over to Southeast Asia, starting to develop the capacity and the capability over there to making shoes. And so he knew Phil Knight. I mean, they didn't work together, but there was like a whole group of shoe dogs during that golden age of footwear development and commercialization. And my dad, I mean, there's not a book about him, but he's definitely in that group. Many people would feel very confident in making that verdict as well.
And did you always know that you wanted to go into the family business, or was that I guess, how did you make that decision to go into footwear?
I never wanted to go into footwear because I mentioned I mentioned I went into personal training. I love, movement, and I wanted to be a personal trainer. I wanted to work with athletes. I wanted to help them perform. And, there was a part of me that had all this knowledge about movement and learning about how to be a better, athlete in general, whether it's soccer or whatever. And there was also this empathetic side of me. I'm like, it's not a compliment. It's just, I just felt like what I went through, I really want to help other players not feel the way that I felt and really help them with their confidence, but not just making them faster, stronger players, but also help them with the mental development of relative to sports. Cause there just wasn't anything like that growing up. I mean, you and I can probably attest to that, where the whole mental side of the game, it never really was a thing that people concerned themselves with until like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. We had nothing like that growing up. And so I really wanted to play a part in helping younger players, talking with them about their confidence and helping them develop that as well. And so that was my goal, dude. I really wanted to get into that. I really wanted to open my own gym and like a training center. And I still do. There's still a part of me that really wants to do that because I still love soccer and I would love to help younger athletes develop physically as well as mentally. But yeah, the family business, it was really kind of like a last ditch effort on my parents to get me to try it. And because they were at a point where my dad is, he's an older dude for sure. And my mom, without my dad, wouldn't really be able to do it. And so they were like, hey, can you just give this a shot for like a year? Otherwise, we're just going to have to shut this down. And, there was a little bit of guilt tripping. It's like, oh, like all these people that have jobs and I don't know what they're going to do. And I was like, okay, fine. I will try it for a year, and 11 years later, here I am.
So for
Got you with
our
the sound story.
Yeah, man, that's the parent guilt trip, man. It worked. It really worked. But you know what? I can't complain.
So
No, no.
for our audience that isn't as well versed in footwear, what is development? What do you do in the footwear creation process?
We don't do anything. We just guess, and no, it's so development is there's different phases within development itself. Think of it as like an umbrella term for a lot of different steps. But development is basically taking something from an idea or a concept and creating prototypes and testing it out and making sure that it is the way it needs to be relative to the goal that you're trying to accomplish, and get it to a production ready sample. That's all development is. It's taking something and making it ready where someone can be like, I am now ready to place an order with the factory to make these. That's pretty much it.
And then I don't know if you remember this, but when we first came to you with the worldie concept, what were your thoughts? Remind us kind of like where we were at and maybe kind of where you thought you could fit in.
So I loved the concept of worldie because as a parent, I care so much about kids' footwear. Kids' footwear is such a second thought for so many companies, and messing with kids' feet, it just really translates to problems as an adult, whether it's, there's bunions and all these different issues that are caused by just not great shoes out there. And it starts with kids. And so with the worldly concept of creating shoes really just for kids, I was like, oh, finally, it's really tough. It is I will say this, it's not easy starting a kids brand. There's a lot of, let's say, challenges from a production side as well as a go-to-market side. But anyways, that's a different conversation. But I love the idea of creating shoes for kids and creating a shoe that allows kids to move in the best way by creating a shoe that they can wear for, any situation, really. And then creating a shoe that doesn't inhibit the growth of a kid's foot. And so, yeah, I would say it was really a combination of my athletic side, my personal training side, understanding the biomechanics and all that stuff. And then also knowing that there's a huge hole in the market to provide something like that parents would really love and appreciate. It was a combination of all that made me be like, okay, yeah, it's going to work. It's definitely going to work. It's going to be hard, but it's going to work.
And why do you think kids are an afterthought in the footwear market?
So kids' shoes, the number one reason why is because parents have a really hard time justifying a purchase for a kid if they don't understand why they need to buy it in the first place. So there's a lack of information relative to kids' foot health. And it's, in that sense, that is a second thought for a lot of parents because they don't know the importance. There is no education on that. They just rely on these companies, and there's just an assumption that these companies make products that must be good. Why would a company make this product if it's not good for your feet or whatever the case, which is just a crazy argument because all they care about is the bottom line, right? So why? And anyways, so it's not even that kids' shoes are a second thought. It's just that kids' foot health is just it's not a high priority, and that becomes a second thought for parents as well. And so there isn't a platform where parents feel that they need to prioritize a kid's foot health. And so that's why like these bigger companies are like, oh, like parents don't even care. So I don't even need to put that much effort into kids' shoes. Why would I need to? It's just a waste of time and resources. We have to spend more time on innovating stuff. We don't need to do that because there is no demand in the market for it. But if there was education on how important foot health is, especially in kids, and it creates that priority, then you will definitely see a bit of a rebound from these bigger companies like, oh gosh, like parents are starting to care about shoes, and maybe we need to put more effort into these kids' shoes now because we're not selling any. And like these other companies are doing a much better job than us. It's about, it's about competition. And so, but yeah, that's what I think it is. It's a lack of priority from parents, but that's just because of education, lack of education of helping them understand how important it is to create that demand. And if it's there, there will be demand for it.
Yeah, I think that hits it right on the head. It's something that I've kind of heard, and we follow another brand, Sage, and they had a similar sentiment about women's footwear. It's
Yeah.
not that a company like Jones and Vining isn't able to develop a last specifically for women or specifically for kids. It's just that there's no demand for it because the
Yeah.
consumer sees, like, they go into whatever store or they shop online and hey, you've got a wall of kids shoes or there's a ton of kids offerings. So they're obviously building shoes for kids. There's these shoes
Yeah.
are kid sizes. Like my kids grow up wearing them. So like you think from a consumer standpoint that there is an offering for kids, but then when you start peeling back those layers and you realize, oh wow, these are just takedowns of adult models, or there's very limited amount of, I guess, resources being spent into the research and development of these kids shoes, it becomes like, oh wow, it is that educational piece, and it allows them
Yeah.
the understanding of, hey, now I should be demanding something better once they have a realization that these aren't necessarily made specifically for kids in the developmental process that kids are obviously in.
Yeah. You nailed it, dude. That's exactly right. It's, I think that you're starting to see why these smaller companies are doing better because they're creating it. It's a quote unquote niche product, but it's like, it should have been this way in the first place. But again, when parents don't know or they don't know that it is a priority, then there is no demand. And I think another reason why I feel that Nike and these bigger brands are so much better at selling shoes relative to these smaller brands is because from a marketing and sales perspective, I mean, I've always said that Nike's it's not a sports company. It's a marketing company. They are so good at knowing how to get someone to buy something. Like Nike literally could pull in Allbirds and move into like home appliances, and with their marketing team, they would sell so many appliances because they're so good at it. It's not the product. It's the marketing and how they influence consumers in wanting to buy their stuff. And so that's the biggest challenge, is that marketing in the form of education, it's not as appealing or as like heart gripping for a consumer versus a lot of the emotional marketing messages that Nike or Adidas send out, right? Because we as human beings, we buy things irrationally and then we justify it rationally. We buy on emotions. If we see something that makes our it like tugs on our heartstrings, we're like, oh, I have to get that because, I just watched this ad from Nike. This works really well with soccer, and it really made me buy a lot of Nike soccer shoes back in the day before I understood. But it's like, oh, like all these pro level players are wearing their shoes. It must be so good, and look how good they are playing in them. Like I wanna look and feel that way too. So I want to buy their shoes. It has nothing to do with like the product features. It has nothing to do with the actual capability of the shoe itself. It's just they're playing on feelings and selling the product through that. And so it's really a battle between how good Nike is at marketing, or like Adidas and all these other companies that really focus on like the emotional tugging to buy products, versus these smaller brands who they are making better products, like actually making better products, but how do you compete against a marketing budget of Nike size? And it's not as compelling for a consumer to listen to a marketing in the form of education message versus like a Nike message. Because when we learn about something, it's not necessarily going to pull on the heart, right? It's not going to be like, oh, like I really need to buy this because, this it's made with mesh. Oh man, that makes my heart feel so, man, like, oh, this rubber. Wow, I get really excited about this rubber.
But
Who
Vibram,
cares?
Vibram rubber.
Yeah, Vibram. Oh man, I
Vibram, my
love
bad.
those guys.
Yeah. I'm mispronouncing.
Who?
Sorry.
Yeah. Like it's like that's so the challenge for a lot of these smaller brands is, okay, how do we compete with how Nike and all these other companies market, but kind of slip in the education in there. And for me personally, I think it's really understanding what parents really want for their kids, and then how do you slip your shoes into the parents' kind of emotional wants for their kids, right? It's like trying to educate, but like in an emotional way. To be like, do you really want your kids to grow up and have to deal with these foot issues? And as a parent, I'm like, no, that sounds awful. I don't want my kids to. It's like, well, that's what a lot of these shoes are doing. All Nike shoes, they're not helping your kids' feet. Like they're gonna have some foot issues here and there. And that's more emotional to me than being like, yeah, my worldie shoes are made with diamond threads. There's no emotional connection
Say
to
100%.
No, yeah, absolutely. They're worth like at least 10 grand a pair. But yeah, so that's the difference. It's the lack of priority from parents, but that's because of lack of education overall on the landscape. And again, there's no demand for it, so Nike doesn't need to do anything about it. It's just like it's a tough landscape to try to break through, but it's doable. It's just kind of figuring out how to do that from a marketing side.
Yeah,
when we first got started, basically everyone said, hey, you guys are never going to make a better product than one of these bigger brands because they have way more budget. They have more people who are working on it. They have smarter people. You guys don't know what you're doing. And you mentioned that a lot of these smaller brands are creating better products than the bigger brands. So for people who might think that sounds super weird or don't believe it, can you just explain that a little bit more? Like how that's actually feasible?
So I can debunk that right away. Definitely not. I think bigger companies, yes, they have the resources, they have the size, they have the whatever, but that does not always guarantee a better product. I mean, look at Skechers. No offense to them. Huge company, but their shoes are made to just be there and they're awful for your feet. If you're listening to this and wearing Skechers, please throw them in the garbage and buy yourself a better pair of shoes. But yeah, it's not always a guarantee that bigger companies have your priorities in mind. They don't care about how it affects your health, how it affects your foot. As long as you're buying it, they're happy. They don't care. But these smaller brands, it always starts off with solving a problem and creating this product to solve a problem. And smaller brands will take the time to innovate and really think about all the different features that would help solve this problem. And so from that standpoint, they put a lot more emphasis into that. And there's a lot more, how do you say this? There's a lot more, there's a better ability of these smaller companies to innovate versus bigger brands as well. We were chatting about this before we started rolling. But bigger companies, they're limited in their timeline and their overall red tape to be able to create a better product. It's just how it is. Because if you look at how products are launched, they're always seasonal, and that doesn't change unless the earth changes. And so they have to follow a specific timeline. And so they have to hit those timelines, whether you're a smaller company or a bigger company. But the biggest difference is that as a bigger company, there's so much red tape that you got to go through. And what I mean by red tape is that if I'm working for a big company, I'm probably working for a manager, and that manager is probably working for like the senior dude. And then the senior dude is working probably for this vice president dude who probably makes all the final calls on products. And so you have 4 layers that you got to get through for you to approve whatever it is that you're trying to design, versus a smaller company that's usually started with 2 or 3 guys or people. And then it'll maybe grow to, 8 to 10 people within a certain amount of time. There is no red tape there because everyone just has a specific role to get something done. And same day decisions are much more innovative than something you have to wait for like a week or 2 weeks. So in that sense, it's a lot easier for small brands to make a better product that way as well, as long as they're really focused on innovating and solving a problem. And most smaller companies are they're more successful at that than the bigger companies. So yeah, it's never a guarantee that bigger companies make better shoes than smaller brands. For me personally, I've been in footwear for over 11 years now, making them and developing them. And I will always prefer to buy from a smaller brand as long as it solves my problem that I'm looking for.
Makes sense. And I want to let you toot your horn a little bit. So in terms of where our shoe was at when we first started working together to where it is now, what improvements have you made to the shoe from a features and benefits standpoint, or helped us make?
Yeah, I would say, because obviously when you start at a concept and an idea, you have to translate that into a physical product, and that translation doesn't always go the way that you intend. And a lot of the problems that you encounter is, okay, like, is this easy to put on? Is this comfortable? Is it even doable from like a cost perspective? Because you can make any shoe you want, but at the end of the day, you got to hit a certain cost, right? So it was really kind of all those things that we went through. It was like, okay, are these comfortable? And you guys were like, not really. Like, okay, let's fix it. So we changed up certain like paper patterns of the upper, so then it's a lot more comfortable for the kids, so it's not rubbing or anything like that. Is it easy to put on? Not really. So we had to fix that also. So we changed, the opening of the shoe. We made it a lot easier to slip on while, still feeling snug on the kid's foot when you're doing the activities. But also from like a costing perspective, it's like, okay, well, I would like to use these materials, but then, it's like, oh, that's pretty expensive. Like, what if relative to your goal, if you're looking to do this, there's an alternative material that would accomplish the same thing, but for cheaper. Not cheaper, that's not the right word. For less, it's less expensive. Cheaper usually means like not as better quality. That's not what I meant. But you can always find ways to substitute a material at a less cost, but it still performs the same way. So it was like a combination of all these different things, taking the concept and really turning it into, the final product that we have now. So, but it was a team effort. It's not like I knew how the shoe was going to fit until you guys put it on kids' feet and they tried it out. I didn't know if it was going to be easy to put on, and I didn't know relative to the cost if it was going to work for you guys. And so it was a team effort for sure.
For sure. And just in general, we talked about this a little bit before too, before we started recording. You said there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of, it's just difficult to innovate in footwear. In the kids' footwear space, where do you see there being an opportunity for more innovation?
That's a good question. You're putting me on the spot. Let's see.
Or what is super bad about kids' footwear now that you just wish someone would solve?
It's really the number one thing for sure is just the fit, like how narrow and how little space inside a shoe is. I would say that's number one. But in terms of innovation in general, I would put ease of wearing as maybe number two. Cause I mean, just thinking as a parent, it's like, all right, kids, put on your shoes and stuff. And 5 hours later, the kids are still trying to put on their shoes because it's too hard to put on. So I would say as like a parent that a great problem to solve would be kids could just slip their feet right into the shoe and they don't even have to adjust it. They just slip it and go. So that's a really good way to innovate as number two. And then number three, I would say maybe like an all-weather shoe, something that you as a parent, kind of saves the bank a little bit in that sense where, because kids' feet grow fast. And so if you can make a shoe that covers a lot of ground in the sense that you can wear it on a sunny day, a rainy day, a snowy day, I would say that's number three. So that I would say those would be my top three ways to innovate on kids' shoes is making it easier to put on. It's actually good for their feet, but then also kind of like an arsenal of being able to wear it anytime, no matter what the weather is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and kind of going a little bit deeper and probably like turning it around so that we can kind of figure out like, okay, what are parents kind of missing when they're actually getting shoes for kids now based upon like what's currently on the market. And now that you have this breadth of knowledge and you've looked behind the curtain of the footwear industry and you're able to kind of like, okay, these brands are doing things correctly, or these are some things that like parents should really be focused on when out shopping for kids shoes or buying kids shoes from the comfort of their homes online. These are some of the things that they should be kind of focusing on or be aware of that this is out there. What are some things, what are some shoes or some features that parents should be like, okay, this is something that I need to make sure I'm looking at or I'm checking out prior to making some sort of like transaction or purchase?
Well, I mean, I've kind of repeated myself as like a broken record, but you got to find shoes that actually resemble the shape of your kid's foot, man. You cannot buy shoes that constricts your feet in any way when you're running or walking. Your feet got to splay properly. Otherwise, it causes issues. You got to think about it from like a biomechanical chain. It starts at the feet. And if your feet are affected over time, it's going to work its way up the chain. It's going to work its way up into the ankle joints. It's going to work its way into the knees, the hips. I mean, a lot of adults face these issues now and they don't even realize it. You know, some adults, they can't even run because their knee hurts or their hips or whatever. Look at the feet, guys. It starts there. That's the first point of contact in any motion is your feet. So if you don't have something that allows your feet to perform the way it's intended to, if you're constricting it, if you're not allowing it to do what it's got to do, you're going to feel it in other parts of your body because it's a whole chain, guys. You know, it's the heart, the reason why people never connect a lot of these movement issues with shoes itself, because there never is an immediate feedback of pain. So like, for example, if you go to a running store and you put on these pair of Nikes and you stand up and you take like a couple jogs and right away your knee starts to hurt and you've never felt that before. You'd probably be like, what? No, I'm not wearing these. Like, why would I wear these? And then you take off the Nike shoes and then the knee pain goes away. You're like, oh, wow, these shoes are definitely causing me knee pain. I'm not going to buy these. It's that missing immediate feedback, because a lot of these problems, it takes a long time for it to manifest. And so you never connect something like that with the source of the issue, because these issues take such a long time. I wish it was like that, because then people would actually, Nike would be innovating a lot more, I would say, in these bigger companies. But I mean, yeah, I would say that for parents, please just buy shoes that actually resemble the shape of your kid's foot. And a really good test for that is when you go into a store and you find a kid's shoe, pull out the insert of the shoes and then have your kid step on the shoes or on the insert. And if your kid's foot doesn't sit entirely on the insert, like if you're like some of your toes or whatever is kind of coming off the insert, it's too narrow. That's too narrow. Don't buy those. Your kid's foot should fit 100% on the insert. It should be on the insert itself. That means there's enough space on the inside part of the shoe. So that's a good test for parents to really try out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a pretty easy test to kind of determine whether or not, that's a quick reference and you can see whether or not there's any kind of overhang or, are there
exactly.
feet like hanging over the side of the insole. So no, that's really good and really easy for parents to be able to kind of like, especially in person. Obviously you can't do it as much online, but in person, that's a very easy kind of test to kind of accomplish and figure out whether or not this product was right for them.
Yeah. Very true.
I want to ask you about the trade-off between performance and foot health, because at some point, I think most athletes are going to say, I care more about my performance than wearing the most optimal shoe for my foot, right? So you play soccer at a certain level, you're going to start wearing narrow shoes. It's my idea, or it's my thought. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's something that sometimes we hear from parents. Those are like super competitive parents where they say, foot health is important, but I also want my kid to perform. So, for kids products, for kids sports products, how do you strike that balance? And is there some kind of performance trade-off that you make when you design athletic footwear that is optimal in terms of kids' foot health?
I wouldn't say there is. There should be a trade-off. There shouldn't be. Because if you look at, for example, if you're playing beach soccer barefoot, I mean, some of the best soccer players in the world that play beach soccer never put on a shoe and they can play soccer. It's just that the availability of those types of products just don't exist. So you're kind of forced to wear what's available. So there's a little bit of a combination of availability as well as marketing brainwash. I mean, that's just what it is.
I was going to ask, are we all brainwashed into thinking that
totally,
that narrow construction is better for performance?
Absolutely. Like the whole concept of having like an 8mm drop in Nike shoes and Adidas shoes. Like, where did that come from? What biomechanical advantage do you have to have an 8 millimeter drop for running? There's like there's a lot of people like, oh, like it really helps with, keeping your heels off the ground and land. Not No, man. Some of the best runners were barefoot, like hunter gatherers, and they're able to run for days without any shoes, without an 8 millimeter drop, because they developed the strength to do that, like how your body was supposed to. It's just really hard because we're just so accustomed to the type of shoes that are readily available that we just feel that that's the norm now. But again, it goes back to the whole education and understanding what the foot needs. There's just a lack of education there, which again doesn't create the demand for these companies to innovate. What's really interesting to me is that, how what marathon was it? The London Marathon, where they just broke the world record for the sub 2.
I don't know.
Yeah, so there was I think it's London. Please don't get people who are listening, don't get mad at me if I get it wrong. I think it's London Marathon, where they broke the sub 2. Two guys ran both in the same exact shoe, Adidas shoe. They broke the sub 2 and the world record. The first guy who won it broke the world. I think actually both guys broke the world record, maybe. But anyways, that's not the point. Both of those guys were wearing this brand new Adidas shoe, and it's based off of a really popular style called the Evo SL. And the Evo SL is like an 8 millimeter, I think it's an 8 millimeter, maybe 6 millimeter drop running shoe that is really popular, kind of sticks with the whole like Nike Adidas theme. But for these specific marathon shoes that cost like $600-700 a pair, the drop is like almost zero. And so it's like, wait a second, why would you make as close to zero drop running shoe for these elite marathoners, but then everything else you make 68 millimeters? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's like, okay, well, doesn't really seem like you need to add drop then if these elite marathoners are able to break world records and go sub 2 hours in a marathon wearing a non-to-existent drop shoe. So it's a lot of these things that if you're aware of, you're just like, it makes no sense. Why do these companies have these drops? Again, it's just a lack of education, unfortunately, on people's understanding of shoes and foot health.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think one of the maybe benefits, and this is not to go down another rabbit hole, but one of the benefits now that parents have at their disposal that they didn't have maybe even 5 years ago or a couple of years ago, is the ability to kind of like research that at a drop of a hat via, like, you name it, AI tool. I know the popular ones being Claude and GPT, but like being able to kind of like research it, perhaps that helps with the education piece a little bit more. And you get a bit more understanding as to like, okay, how footwear is impacting not only, me as an adult and my performance. Obviously, a pair of shoes wouldn't help me break the 2 hour limit or 2 hour record or whatever for a marathon. But like in terms of just being able to perform, day to day, just how that impacts me. And then also the impact that it has on kids when they're at that, that developmental phase, and they don't have the same type of makeup yet that adult feet have. And so they're a bit more malleable. Yeah. And being able to get that information is a bit easier now. And so, you have it obviously from decades of experience, but like now parents are able to kind of maybe do a little bit more research on their own and see that and see, okay, these are some of the things that I should really be on the lookout for.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Yeah. I mean, there was this, I remember hearing that it's not about information collection, it's about information curation now. It's about, you can literally Google search anything, but you need to curate that relative to what you're trying to find out, and making sure that it's like a trusted source, and it's, maybe a peer reviewed, study, these kinds of things. So it's learning how to curate that information and making sure you're getting the right information that way as well. And just to add to kind of these shoes that are considered norm, which I heavily disagree with, is oftentimes when you do wear shoes that are good for you, or, shoes that are good for you are essentially barefoot. Shoes should just be like a protective form of barefoot shoes. It should mimic just hypothetically, if you weren't wearing shoes, it should just be that same type of feeling, but just cushioned underneath. That's what shoes should be. That's the whole point of shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But because especially adults from such a young age, we were already wearing these Nikes and Adidas and stuff like that, that has just caused so much change in our body's ability to walk barefoot without feeling sore or without it hurting, that we feel now, since we're so used to something that we're not supposed to be used to, reverting back to the actual way, it takes transition time, and it hurts. And it unfortunate, right? Because your body adapts over time. It adapts to any type of stressor, or it will adapt to something that you kind of force on it. So when you force your body to adapt to wearing these shoes, switching back, it hurts because your body has to get strength in the arch. It has to get strength in the calves. You need to develop these again. But if you don't, you're just going to experience the pain that you already do now, which is like in the ankles, the knees, and the hips. But because if you do transition back and you build that strength within the arch, within the calves, the lower extremities, pretty much, it creates that support network for the rest of your biomechanical chain to function properly. So then eventually you're just not going to feel this pain anymore. Like it'll hurt as you transition, but then everything else just settles in once you build that strength. So I think that's part of that immediate feedback I was talking about too earlier, is like people are just so used to wearing bad shoes that when they do walk barefoot or they're standing barefoot or whatever, it just hurts. They're like, I need to wear my Nikes again because it doesn't hurt when I wear my Nikes. So it's like the wrong feedback, unfortunately. So they're just stuck to that old way because transitioning back causes, quote unquote pain, when it's just really your body building the strength that it needs.
Yeah, and it certainly is a process. I remember making the transition. I was trying to get into barefoot shoes a bit more and in zero drop shoes or close to zero drop shoes. And it's kind of taxing as your body tries to, I guess, get adjusted or acclimated to kind of being barefoot or in a barefoot style, especially when you're trying to, run or you're doing any kind of performance sports. It's just a different feel to it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've kind of like looked at is like, okay, how can we, obviously once you put your shoe or once you put your foot into a shoe, you've changed the environment in which your foot is in. Like you've kind of like created this barrier between you and the surface or you and the earth. And so it's not going to be the same. It's you can replicate it a little bit, but it's not going to be the exact same. And so trying to figure out like, okay, how can we accomplish that? Because we do want that protective layer. Barefoot is cool, but like there's a lot of stuff out there in the world in which we live that you probably don't want to do that all the time. And that's not even from like a cultural norm standpoint, just from like this world is different than, from like our ancestors way back when they were walking around on grass and dirt. This is, concrete and a lot of man-made stuff. So like being able to kind of create that protective barrier while at the same time trying to mimic what, barefoot and being able to run without any kind of shoes or anything on. And I think it is a careful balance because I know even for me, like adjusting, like I had to kind of wear them for certain periods of time. And then like, okay, you don't want to put too much strain. So like, I think even Zero, like they do a bunch with like barefoot shoes. They would send out like a little note alongside the shoes to kind of like give you an idea of like kind of how to wear and how to acclimate to them, wear them for a certain period of time until you kind of get accustomed to them. How do you think about that when it comes to like kids? Because they're in a different like stage. Obviously, they've gone through they've evolved a little bit, but they're still very malleable. They're still pretty flexible. Getting them into like a barefoot style shoe early on may or may not have the same ramifications as me, an older adult, putting them on for like the first time. What are your thoughts about like getting them in early? Is that something that is very beneficial, or is that something that like you kind of like do the same thing? You want to kind of do it in stages and get them acclimated and accustomed to it?
No, I mean, you pretty much nailed it in terms of kids' feet and how much more forgiving their feet are in the sense of the adaptation. It is more malleable, because it's developing. And so definitely get them in early because it's not even about So acclimating is kind of what you would just call the whole process. But when you're getting them into the shoes that allow your feet to function the way it does, it's also building a lot of the support network that your foot needs. It builds a lot of the tendons. It builds the muscles around the ankles. It creates that support structure of basically the foot and kind of stuff below the knees to support everything else. So you're really setting them up for better performance that way, right? Because if you are trained in knowing how to move efficiently and properly, that's only going to make all your other stuff better. It's a better foundation. So yeah, I mean, as a parent, I got my kids in 0 drop wide shoes because I understand just how much that's going to benefit them and how, they're not going to experience like a lot of the problems that a lot of people do just because of wearing bad shoes, man. It's so crazy just how detrimental wearing a bad pair of shoes is for a long period of time. But yeah, get in them now, get them used to it. They can build the strength, and then it will only help them with their performance later on as well.
Yeah, 100% agree. I know we're getting close to time and thinking about like a way to kind of put a nice bow on the conversation. And so I guess like for listeners who listen to this at high speed, what's a 1 minute, 2 minute like spiel that kind of get them caught up and really like touch on some of the high level stuff that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I would say really take the time to think about what shoes would really benefit not just you, but for your kids as well. For as an adult, it's harder to transition back to the shoes that you should be wearing. But for kids, this is the best time for them to do it. Don't put them in the shoes that's going to affect them later on. Because think about it this way. As adults, we are in this position now because of what we grew up with. And it's hard to transition back to where you should be because we just weren't educated in that at that time. So don't let your kids fall into the same situation that we as adults are in, because now you have the information. So really implement that and get them shoes that really will help them not just feel better, but perform better, pain-free. The list goes on in terms of the benefits and no repercussions. It's really that simple.
I think that was a good synopsis of everything, and really, again, is able to package it all up for our speed listeners. But I definitely just want to reiterate, yeah, it is it is important to get kids into the right footwear early on, and it's easy to get caught up in the pageantry of all the marketing that goes on out there, and fall in line with that, and kind of rely on the big brands or whoever's kind of making the shoes to do things the right way. It really is kind of incumbent upon, parents, guardians, people who are responsible for purchasing the products that kids wear to really like look into it. So yeah, I totally 100% agree.
Yeah, it's just an investment in your kids' health, man. I mean, you would make a lot of different investments in your kids' health, whether it's like dental, whether it's just movement in general, like activities. Those are all investments. So should easily be classified as an investment in your kids' health. Just proper shoes. It really does start. It's that important.
Agreed. All right. Any final thoughts?
No, man, not for me. I was just rambling on and on. So I appreciate you
Nah,
guys.
that's what a podcast is all about. You just ramble on.
That's true. Right. You don't want dead silence where people are like, is my phone working? Did I lose service? Yeah.
No, but yeah, it was always good chatting with you. And now that people got a chance to kind of, I guess, be a fly on the wall in one of our conversations, so it's cool. It's always a chance to learn something, and I think this is something of value that parents can walk away with and say, like, okay, these are some things that I should really like think about and consider specifically about footwear. But I think these same type of characteristics can be, leveraged in so many other aspects and areas. But cool.
Agree. Yeah, agree. Totally agree.
Well, thanks for jumping on. I think that's the pod.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Just a massive information overload. My bad, parents.
Cool. Well, appreciate it, David.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was really good chatting with you as always.
Yep, you too. Thank you.